whispers under the bridge. The crisp autumn air clung to my skin, carrying the faint scent of burnt wood and decaying leaves. I was 16, that restless age where rules felt more like challenges than boundaries. Our high school volleyball team had an annual tradition of volunteering at a remote camp nestled deep in the woods. The camp sat miles from the nearest town, surrounded by dense forests that seemed to whisper secrets with every rustle of wind. It was late October, and the sun had dipped below the horizon by 8 p.m., leaving the sky draped in a blanket of inky darkness. My two closest friends, Jake and Trevor, and I gathered around a flickering campfire, the warmth doing little to thaw the boredom creeping into our bones. The woods around us seemed to breathe, the occasional crack of a twig or rustle of leaves pulling our eyes into the shadows. "I heard there's a river down the hill," Jake said, tossing a small twig into the flames. His eyes gleamed with the kind of mischief that often led to trouble. "Bet there's something cool down there." The river was technically off-limits. It ran through private property owned by a recluse. The camp owner had warned us about a man rumored to be unpredictable, maybe even dangerous. They said he'd once chased a group of hikers with a hatchet for stepping too close to his land. But we were 16, fueled by defiance and the thrill of breaking rules. So we grabbed a couple of flashlights and set off into the night, laughter echoing softly behind us. The trek took about 10 minutes, the forest growing darker and denser with each step. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches clawing at us like bony fingers. When we finally reached the river, it was wider than we expected, its surface shimmering under the faint moonlight. A large wooden bridge spanned the water, sturdy enough for a truck to cross. The bridge creaked ominously with the gentle breeze, as if it remembered every dark secret it had witnessed. "Let's check under it," Trevor suggested, his voice a mix of curiosity and excitement. We scrambled down the embankment, our flashlights casting long, jittery shadows. The air grew colder under the bridge, and the only sound was the gentle rush of water mingling with our quiet chatter. But there was something else, to an almost imperceptible whisper, like the faint echo of voices carried on the wind. Suddenly, two distant headlights pierced the darkness, growing larger as they approached the bridge. Panic gripped us. "Hide!" Jake hissed, and we dove beneath the bridge, pressing ourselves against the cold, damp earth. The truck rumbled overhead, its tires groaning against the wooden planks. We held our breath, hearts pounding like war drums. After it passed, we relaxed slightly, whispering and skipping stones into the river, adrenaline morphing into shaky laughter. But then we heard the faint growl of an engine, growing louder. The truck was coming back, slower this time. We froze. Instead of driving across, the truck stopped right above us. The engine idled, a low, menacing hum vibrating through the wooden beams. Then, with a sharp creak, the driver's door swung open. A heavy thud followed as boots hit the bridge. "I know you're out there," a voice bellowed, rough and filled with rage. Fear surged through me. I glanced at Jake and Trevor. Both were trembling, eyes wide with terror. The man paced above us, his footsteps like thunderclaps, a flashlight beam slicing through the darkness as he scanned the area. "I'll find you, you hear me?" We remained motionless, barely daring to breathe. The beam of the flashlight occasionally slipped through the cracks in the planks, casting slivers of harsh light onto our faces. I could hear the man muttering to himself, strange, fragmented words that made no sense if he was arguing with someone who wasn't there. Minutes felt like hours. Eventually the footsteps ceased, replaced by the creak of the truck door and the engine roaring back to life. We waited, paralyzed, long after the sound faded. Trevor finally whispered, "We need to go, now." We crawled out from under the bridge, hugging the riverbank, hearts pounding in unison. I risked a glance back. Big mistake. The truck was still there. The man sat in the driver's seat, his face partially illuminated by the dashboard light. He was staring right at me, a twisted grin stretched across his face. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and waved. Terror exploded inside me. I screamed and bolted, my friends right behind me. Branches whipped at my face as we sprinted into the woods, the man's furious shouts echoing behind us. I dared a quick look back and saw him chasing us, something glinting in his hand, a rusted hunting knife, jagged and menacing. We didn't stop until we reached camp, lungs burning, bodies trembling. We slipped into our tents, too scared to speak, sleep eluding us as every sound outside felt like a threat. The rustle of leaves became footsteps. The wind against the tent felt like fingers dragging across the fabric. The next morning, we told the camp owner. He listened quietly, then nodded solemnly. "That man," he began, his voice low. "His name's Daryl, lives by himself. He ain't right. Had trouble with him before. Got a history of violence. Used to work at a slaughterhouse before he snapped one day. They found drawings all over his walls, creepy stuff." The gravity of his words sank in. We had been inches from something unspeakable. That night under the bridge haunted me for years. The man's sinister smile etched into my memory like a scar. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still see him there, waving. But in my nightmares, he isn't waving goodbye, he's beckoning me to come closer.